Hey, this is Nathan, author of The Voice in the Well, and today we're going to be checking out the demo that's finally out on Steam for the visual novel adaptation of the first part of Book 1. I'm just super excited to finally have this out there. It's been a collaborative work between myself and Eli Rankin, who did all the characters, all the sprites and the character design, and a couple other artists on Fiverr for the backgrounds and some voice actors, and I'm just super excited to finally have this out. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Jay squinted against the sunlight as he followed his parents up the nature trail. He sighed. This is the last day of summer break before 7th grade, and I'm seriously spending it out here. He trembled as a cold shiver moved over his body. What was that? Another wave of icy tingles moved down his spine. I hope I'm not sick. The trail ahead blurred, and wooziness fell over him. Jay reached out and grabbed the wooden guardrail, steadying himself. His eyesight returned to normal as he blinked.
Jay! Would you hurry it up?
He looked up to see his dad glaring back. Gritting his teeth, Jay stared back. Neither broke eye contact. With a look of disgust, his dad turned back and continued up the trail. Something like a solid wave slammed against his back. He tumbled forward, reaching out his hands to stop his fall, but there was nothing but darkness before him. It felt like he was tumbling through empty air, his eyes darting around, trying to find something. There was nothing around him but utter darkness. Jay landed harshly on the ground, knocking the wind out of his lungs. He lay on the ground gasping. After a moment, he noticed thick, damp vegetation against his face. Jay rolled over. Through the canopy of trees, a dark, cloudy gray sky greeted him. Blinking, he tried to take it all in. He rubbed his eyes. Nothing changed. What's going on? He lay there for a long minute, catching his breath. Standing up, Jay looked around. The trail, his parents, and everyone else was gone. In their place, tall pines and maples loomed over his head.
Mom! Evan? Hello? Anybody?
Where am I? This isn't right. Jay looked down at himself, concerned that he might have broken something. He patted down his legs, but there didn't seem to be anything wrong. Surprisingly, whatever had hit him had not seriously hurt him. That's a relief, but seriously, where am I? I could just stay here for a bit. Maybe they're looking for me. No one would be looking. It'd be just like last summer when his older brother Evan ran away. Jay's parents told them not to tell anyone that Evan was gone. He had shown up 3 weeks later, and... Jay shook his head. He didn't want to think about what had happened afterwards. I gotta find help. I don't know where I'm at. Surely there's gotta be someone that'll help. Looking around, he weighed his options. There were not any obvious openings in the foliage. Shakily, he set off, putting one foot in front of the other. Jay pushed past tree limbs and scrambled through the dense foliage. He slipped and fell into a fern bush. Jay pushed the leafy fronds away as he got back on his feet. It wasn't long before he spotted a clearing through the underbrush. He sat forward earnestly. Once he was out of this forest, he would find someone, and they could help him get back home. Jay stopped in his tracks. He stood still, eyes darting around. I thought I saw something. There were plenty of trees and dense underbrush for someone to hide behind. Maybe it was nothing. However, the thought didn't quite sit right with him. Jay couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching him. He turned, surveying the area, but didn't see anyone. A feeling of being watched surrounded him. It was as if the trees themselves were carefully observing his movements, relaying what they had seen to others hiding in their deep shadows. Eyes darting around, Jay didn't see anything apart from the trees and underbrush around him. Probably just being paranoid. Jay started rubbing his arms, noticing how cold it was. The dark gray storm clouds overhead looked ready to unleash a torrent of rain at any moment. I've got to keep moving towards the clearing and get out of the forest. He pushed through the ferns and other shrubbery out into a grassy plain. It stretched out as far as he could see in front of him. Off in the distance stood an old stone tower. That has to be someone's home. Jay took a step forward towards the lighthouse when he caught something from the corner of his eye. He saw a thick, gray cloud like a tornado standing in place. It stood over 2 meters tall. Though the cloud moved like a tornado, its movement was not affected by the wind, nor was there any wind coming from it. Something about the cloud felt alive to Jay. It was crazy. There was no way this was real. He tried to look at it directly, but the gray cloud was incredibly hard to focus on. A feeling of wrongness settled in the pit of his stomach. It felt as if the dark gray cloud was staring at him. There was a deep scraping of metal upon metal from within the moving cloud. That's not possible. Then from every corner of Jay's senses, the uncanny feeling of being watched intensified. It was like being on a soccer field and having a crowd of thousands observing him, but they were not there to cheer him on. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't right. It shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. Jay started backing away, and something inside the cloud moved, the cloud cover moving with it. Jay broke out into a full sprint away from the cloud and towards the lighthouse. A sound like thunder rumbled in the sky. The rattle of metal sounded behind him. Fear struck his heart. It was after him. Jay pushed himself to run as fast as he could. Ominous low tones crashed and rumbled above him. The dark clouds above him let loose a heavy torrent of rain. Jay kept running as the rain pelted down upon him. Jay reached the lighthouse, screeching to a halt by the front door. The rain continued to beat down as Jay pounded on the front door.
Please! Let me in!
He continued pounding on the door, but there was no answer. Jay turned around, looking to see if the dark tower of fog was still out there. Squinting, he couldn't see it through the downpour. He turned back, looking for an overhang that he could use as shelter. Anything to get out of the rain. The old wooden door opened.
Who is it?
The older man stared at Jay for a moment.
What are you doing out there in the storm? Come inside.
The man beckoned Jay to come inside. Jay quickly rushed inside. The door slammed shut behind him. Jay stood as the stranger looked Jay over for a moment and then gestured to the fireplace.
Make yourself comfortable and warm yourself by the fire. I'll fetch you a towel to dry yourself with.
The stranger went off down the small hallway into a side room through a wooden door. Will I be safe from that pillar of fog? What was that thing? What do I do? Jay looked around the room. All the furnishings seemed old, like antiques. The room had a musty smell about it. Jay made his way over to the fireplace. It was so nice and warm. Jay stood watching the fire flicker. A moment later, the stranger came back with a towel and some clothing.
This should warm you up. While these might not be your size, they'd be better than those soaked,
The stranger studied Jay's clothing for a moment.
That is some very odd attire you are wearing.
Jay looked down. He was wearing a pair of blue jeans, t-shirt, and shoes. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Jay looked up at the stranger. The old man was dressed in a worn-out monk's robe. I'd better be polite at least.
Thanks.
What are you doing all the way out here? In the middle of the storm, no less. Did you come from town?
The stranger paused, taking a breath.
I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Ernest Meyerson.
Jay!
Nice to meet you, Jay.
Where am I?
You are really quite lost. For starters, you are in my lighthouse, which I watch over. Just like my father and his father before him.
Ernest continued talking, but Jay was having a hard time focusing. He just wanted to wake up back home. This cannot be real. What happened to everyone? Ernest paused, looking at Jay.
Goodness, you must be exhausted. I have a spare room here, though it hasn't been used in years. Who knows how long it's been?
Ernest walked off to the table and picked up another candle holder.
I'll show you to your room.
Do I really want to stay here? What choice do I have? It'll be just for the night, and I'll get to a town tomorrow and figure out something? Jay slowly moved forward, accepting the candlestick Ernest was holding out. He followed Ernest down towards the hall. The candlelight illuminated the discolored wood as they passed down the hallway. Ernest stopped in front of an old, lopsided door. He twisted the door handle, and with a loud squeak, the door creaked open.
He's probably quite dusty. My apologies, but there is a bed with clean bedding.
Thanks.
Jay entered the room and closed the door. He waited next to the door, pressing his ear against it. He listened as Ernest's footsteps faded away down the hallway. Jay turned his attention to the room, peering around by the candlelight. Cobwebs were everywhere. And I thought my parents were messy. This was different. Their neglect usually consisted of empty frozen meal containers and beer cans stacking up. A web strung out from the corner of the ceiling to a chest of drawers. That must have been made by a huge spider. How can it be covered in bites when I wake up tomorrow? Maybe I should just run for it. No, not out in this storm, especially not with that thing out there. Jay pushed the small bedside stand in front of the door. It's not much, but at least it'll block the door and make some noise if it's moved. Jay started getting out of his wet clothes, throwing them on the floor. He held up the pants and shirt Ernest had given him. Am I dressing up for some historical reenactment? He had watched a few during his school trips. The shows were really cool, seeing the knights dueling and jousting. I could be up on the stage wearing this. As a peasant, maybe. The shirt felt rough. Still, it felt good getting out of his wet clothes and into something dry. Jay pulled back the blankets. No spiders. No nest of spiders under the pillow either. Setting the pillow back down, he got into bed. Jay pulled the covers up around him. His eyes widened at the sound. What was that? He sat up and looked around the room. Maybe it's just the house making noises. I mean, it's super old after all. There was a harsh snapping noise, and the room fell into darkness. Jay looked at the candle still sitting on the nightstand. It had been snuffed out. His eyes quickly adjusted to the darkness. Maybe I should... His eyes were drawn to the far corner of the room. It was wholly and utterly dark. Jay stared at the darkness that rested in the corner. He couldn't take his eyes off of it. There was something there. He knew there was something. Jay desperately wanted to yell, "Help! Get away from me!" But the words wouldn't come out of his mouth. A low scraping noise emanated from the darkness. And that is the end of Chapter 1 and the end of the demo. I'd love to hear down in the comments below what you thought of the demo. There's a couple of things that I'm definitely going to be tweaking, like the gold highlighted option buttons. But apart from that, and tweaking a few things here and there, I would most appreciate any feedback and whatnot. So, like I mentioned earlier, the demo covers just Chapter 1 of the book, and this first visual novel is going to cover the first arc of Book 1, basically breaking up Book 1 into like a Part 1 and Part 2. In addition, I'm going to be adding a couple extra small alternate choices that the player can make, where Jay can go talk to some of the other villagers, and he might bump into someone who appears later in Book 1, and just add a couple little extra things so you're not only getting the full book experience, you're also getting all the art and the voice acting, and then you're also getting a little extra added on to the world. Be sure to wishlist it on Steam if you like the demo, and I'll catch you guys next time.